Okay, today we're going to be taking a look at the framing routine. Uh, First, let's read the introduction paragraph. I've chosen an article about the Gilded Age to read and then work on the main points. As the United States settled itself into its new role as both an economic power and a safe haven for immigrants looking for both wealth and acceptance following the Civil War, industrialization developed at a rapid pace. The effects of industrialization are long lasting and helped America develop into a successful nation. This time period of development is nicknamed the Gilded Age, a title adopted from Mark Twain's The Gilded Age, A Tale of Today, and refers to the idea that the superficial beauty of American culture was in reality covering up for a time period in which politics was constantly shifting at the hands of men with little substance to add to history. Large business in the form of railroads and oil conglomerates ran the American economy, and newly emerging changes within labor forces. So I would say that I've written a little bit. The economic boom period following the Civil War was marked by corruption. I'm going to put political corruption. And helped America become a world power. Okay, so let's get ready for that. Okay. Within the Gilded Age, America was introduced to 5 presidents, 4 of which were not elected to second terms. These presidents, Rutherford B. Hayes, James Garfield, Chester A. Arthur, Grover Cleveland, who was elected to a second term, albeit not consecutively, and Benjamin Harrison, are coined as forgotten presidents due to their little impact upon America's future. 3 of the presidents helped exemplify the Gilded Age corrupt image. Hayes, Garfield, and Arthur are all associated with the practice of party patronage, or handing out government jobs to faithful supporters. This way of government was clearly crooked and did little for the betterment of America. Supporters of this practice, stalwarts, and their rivals, the half-breeds, are generally considered the low point in American politics. With the hard-fought and dirty election of Grover Cleveland, Americans had hoped a better government would emerge. Cleveland signed into law several acts that attempted to better economics, the Interstate Commerce Act of 1881, and to help Native Americans, the Dawes Act. Discontent grew as differentiating opinions on money began to dominate politics. In an argument that almost directly relates to the Gilded Age nickname, farmers demanded more greenbacks, paper money, be put into circulation, assuming money would come to their pockets. Then was supported by gold in the National Reserve. The idea of quantity over quality parallels both the time period name and the events. In a Republican-led Congress, Harrison ran America's first billion-dollar Congress, which quickly put into act several laws that varied from tariffs to increasing Civil War pensions to African American voting rights. Perhaps most significant about the unimpressive period of politics that ruled the Gilded Age was the rise of the McKinley administration at the end of the age. This administration had long-lasting effects that led to the rise of the USA as an international power and revolutionized the way political campaigns were run. Okay, so let's go back to our framing idea. Our main idea in this paragraph is that we have few notable presidents. And let's fill in some of these essential details. I'm going to go with a few second terms, jobs for political allies, you might say. And I'll go back here. stalwarts and half-breeds. It doesn't really fit well into this. It doesn't really go well into this thing. You get the point. So I put Grover Cleveland. Next. The Interstate Commerce Act. Let's work down a little bit more. So separate these. I don't really like the way this is laid out. Let's try that. Harrison raises tariffs and also pensions for veterans, and then McKinley, what's a good way to put this? Leads to a rise in power. And I don't really having trouble fitting it all into the. Let's try making it even smaller. McKinley leads to a rise in power. It's okay. Get out of here. Okay. As the American economy grew and shifted, large private-owned and public corporations established themselves as power players in American society. These large businesses included railroads, steel corporations, and oil trusts, and succeeded in both making a lot of people very wealthy, but also contributing to corruption and scandal. Monopolies were set up in certain industries, systematically eliminating competition through vertical and horizontal integration. The beauty of men such as oil mogul John D. Rockefeller, a young businessman who built an empire, faded in the harsh business tactics, forcing rival companies to sell out, buying out those companies, and bringing them into his control, employed for his personal wealth and gain. This juxtaposition of image versus reality demonstrates the overall image of the Gilded Age. Railroads as well led to widespread corruption. The handing out of federal land grants promoted shady business deals and construction. As middle-class America expanded and the division of the haves versus the have-nots became clear within society, families often relied on the earnings of workers. These laborers often worked in factories for wages gained after working 10 to 12 hours a day. For the first time, women also began to work in these labor jobs for wages just as the men did. Though the work women tended to turn to were often seen as extensions of the home, it was a large step for women out of the designated wife role. As immigration increased and flooded the workplace with cheap and always in-demand workers, discontent grew. Industrialization proved difficult to adapt to, and conditions in factories were dismal. Strikes were attempted by the factory workers, but the excess of labor from the immigrants foiled the attempts. Eventually, the discontent led to violence, as seen in the Great Railroad Strike of 1877. A national movement, the strike garnered the attention of the president, who sent federal troops to crush the rebellion. While for some railroads the uprising was successful, for many others it was not. Eventually, attempts to organize national unions formed several unsuccessful unions that led to more violence or little change. So that should be a second paragraph, since this is more about business. So I'm going to go back on the rise of big business. Essential details. They're constructed of railroads, steel, and oil. Unfair business practices, vertical and horizontal integration. Let's go back. So, buying up competition. That is not how you spell competition. Federal land grants to businesses. And what was that last sentence? Shady business deals. So let's go back to the. So the main idea here is labor. And we have haves and have-nots. $10 to 12-hour days. Women began working in factories. Immigration led to cheap labor. Poor factory conditions. Attempts to unionize. Resistance from business. Federal troops used to break strikes. Okay, so now let's read the last passage. The Gilded Age proves that the view on the surface does not always reflect the true happenings inside of a system. While America was portrayed to other countries as paved with gold and opportunity, both immigrants and the American people quickly learned that this was not always so. Because of the dismal political factions that did little for America, the large businesses that bullied and manipulated the corporate world, and the labor dissatisfaction, it is clear that America's nickname for this time period is well deserved. So the big idea was that, pull this down, that economic growth, political corruption, and business corruption were all hallmarks of the Gilded Age. So with that, I think we'll stop. That is my framing routine. Thank you.